change. Let me say something.
Hi to all of you watching on BBC World News. Welcome back to Well and Have Your Say. We're following the hostage situation in Algeria, also talking about the unrest in Mali too, and taking on the broader issue of militant Islam in North and West Africa. Lots of you have been getting in touch. Iyad's watching in Dubai. He says, what's worse than being captured by Islamists, being rescued by the Algerian army? And Ogne says it would be better if the Algerian authorities let the companies negotiate with the terrorists. Well, I think the government would argue perhaps it's for them to do the negotiating, but also maybe there wasn't time to bring in the numerous different companies who have a stake in this gas field. Now, let's talk about the broader issue across the region. We've already met William Jordan. He was a US diplomat in Algeria. Let's also bring in Alice Ukoko, who works for the Women in Africa group. She's Nigerian, though based in London. And Dr. Bernie Sebb is an expert on North Africa from the University of Birmingham. And though he's French, he's lived in this part of North Africa before. Dr. Sebb, let me perhaps start with you. I've got a number of questions from viewers, all asking similar points, which is, to what extent is this the Mali conflict spilling over into Algeria now?
Yeah, good afternoon. Yes, it is definitely a very closely linked conflict. And actually, we're talking about the two sides of the same coin, because the conflict started as, first of all, a confrontation between Islamist militants and the Algerian government in the 1990s in what was called the Dirty War of Algeria, which claimed the lives of between 70,000 and 150,000 people, lasting over 10 years and being a vicious war of peace as well, taking place in several places of Algeria, and also needing a scaling up of the capability of the Algerian army so that it could finally claim victory against most of the terrorist groups operating in the first place in northern Algeria, but then afterwards in the Sahara as well, which is the place where they sought refuge when they were no longer able to resist the attacks which the Algerian army launched against their facilities and their men. So to a large extent, it's actually an Algerian-born conflict, which was later on exported to Mali and which comes back to Algeria today through these terrorist activities.
So bearing that in mind, William, are you following this whole story and thinking, well, when I was working in Algeria, I knew this was coming, the world just hadn't woken up to it?
Absolutely. In fact, for the last 10 years, from back when I was in Washington, I've been following the situation and seeing the situation in northern Mali developing with what was then called the Salafist Group for Preaching into Combat, which later became AQIM, implanting itself and really creating a presence that was not only destructive to Mali, but also to the rest of the world. The most alarming aspect of this, I agree with everything that Dr. Sebb just said, the most aggravating aspect of this over the past year that we've seen, of course, is with the collapse of the Gaddafi regime in Libya and the sudden proliferation of light and sophisticated weaponry, in addition to the return of some of the people who were under Gaddafi's control, has aggravated and intensified a lot of the cleavages and conflicts in northern Mali. But you have to look at this as a regional whole, and regional not just in terms of the Sahel, not just in terms of the Maghreb, but in terms of the trans-Sahara region of Northwest Africa.
William, thank you very much indeed. We're getting lots of tweets on the WHYS hashtag. Let me just read you a couple. And by the way, if you're watching and you send any messages via email, Facebook or Twitter, it all comes straight to me here and I'll weave as many of your points as I can into the conversation. Sam in Zambia says, why is Algeria taking so much of the blame for this? Mira in India suggests this is the beginning of a new period of time where Americans are being targeted abroad. And Julu in Liberia says the action of Algeria should be supported by all of the nations. Well, at the moment, there are certainly some lukewarm responses to what Algeria has done. Now, it's so quick how all of this has developed. This time last week, we were looking at the beginning of French military involvement in Mali. And all week long, President Francois Hollande has been very keen to emphasize that he feels he still has made the right decision. Let's just look at one quote that he's given in the last day or so. What's happening in Algeria provides further evidence that my decision to intervene in Mali was justified. I just wonder, Alice, whether you agree with that.
I do not. I do not agree that military
intervention from outside into Mali was the right decision to make. So obviously the French president has said he will go in to protect the French citizens and also the French interest. So obviously coming from that point of national interest, that will be fine. But at the same time, for me, I will expect that when external intervention is going in, you must say precisely why you are going in. So if you don't say why you are going in, you'll get people confused.
Well, he's saying he's going in to protect the government because the militants in the north were making progress towards Bamako. Dr. Seb, do you think Francois Hollande has made a convincing case for French military intervention?
Yes, I have to say that, and this is completely separate from the point of view which I'm developing as a French citizen, but I believe that actually the decision was perfectly justified on the grounds that A, it was the Malian government which requested help, and B, also every effort had been made to favor a negotiated outcome to the crisis. I mean, we need to bear in mind that northern Mali has been under the rule of the Islamist militant groups since the summer of 2012, and a lot of efforts had been also invested into negotiating, especially in Ouagadougou, in Burkina Faso, under the aegis of President Blaise Compaoré, and in particular in liaison with the Algerian counterparts, and Algerian diplomatic efforts were made in order to find a negotiated outcome to the stalemate in Mali.
So,
however,
Dr. Seb, let me just jump in though, because you're giving a lot of reasons to justify the French actions, and as you're doing it, Alice, I can see your brow becoming more and more furrowed.
Well, the thing is, what I know is that the world is sleepwalking into a third world war situation. And we appear to be getting quite a lot of justifiable reasons for this to happen at each point of the way. I believe very firmly that civil society is part of should be part of the peace-seeking process. Because when you bring arms to bear in a situation that is so volatile as in Mali, then obviously the grass where all of this will happen should also be consulted. It is said, we're made to believe that because the president of Mali asks for external intervention, then that justifies France going in.
And Alice, let me tell you that Sambou Dieng in Gambia is watching you and all of our other guests, and he's really backing up what you're saying. He says, isn't it possible for the French to help suspend military operations and try and find a political solution? I mean, Dr. Seb, wouldn't French efforts be better off speaking to the militants in the north, speaking to the government and seeing if some halfway house can be found?
Yes, this is actually what has been going on for months now, and everyone has been putting all the efforts that were possible in order to come to a resolution of the conflict, which was peaceful and negotiated. The issue is that immediately after the Islamists decided actually to intervene militarily and to break the statu quo, which had been prevailing since the summer, what was the best solution? Was it just to let the Malian government collapse in Bamako and then see where we could take it from, whilst everyone else had actually agreed to arrange for an international force to come in September? But if by September there was no Malian government anymore, what was the point of organizing such
But I suppose there will be some.
That was the whole idea.
There will be some Syrians thinking, well, hold on a minute. There have been many times when the Syrian opposition has asked for the French to help out militarily and other powers besides, and it hasn't come. So what's the difference here? Lots of you are getting in touch. I'll work in as many of your comments as I can. Recent calls coming in from Nepal, Ethiopia, Gambia, Greece, Canada and India. But let's go live now to one of the countries that we're talking about, to Mali, Bamako to be precise. Kumba Ba is an activist there. And Kumba, tell me, are you glad the French have come?
Hello, hi to everyone. Of course, I'm very glad that the French came, and I think all the French people, the French government, and the president himself. My sister just said that to her, the French people should have not come. But I think we need to bear in mind, we have been watching each other position for the past 9 months, to not even say a year, because this whole situation started back in January 2012. And as far as we all know, nobody was doing any military action for the 9 past months. We were watching each other position, we were talking, trying to talk, to negotiate, but what do we do when we become attacked? We were attacked, And if French people had not helped us with the aerial strike, we would have been in a very, very dramatical situation. So the French people did just what they were supposed to do. Anybody who wants social justice, who wants to help, and who wants people to have freedom of a religion should be for this war. Because we are not doing, how do you say, it's just self-defense. So to me, there is no thinking about that.
And Kumba, I'm just going to jump in here because we're just coming up to the end of the half hour here on World Have Your Say, but you're very welcome. I can see Alice very keen to respond and Dr. Seb too. All of you, just bear with me. I'll come back to you in a moment, but a passionate justification there by Kumba, live from Bamako, saying we needed the French to come in to get the differences between the North and the Islamists and the government moving. I wonder if you agree with that. We'll be live here on BBC World News in a couple of minutes' time.
Let's just say something.
I'm Ros Atkins. Welcome back to World Have Your Say. We're following the hostage situation in Algeria, also the conflict in Mali, and we're having a broader discussion about militant Islam in North and West Africa. Next, we'll be joined live by guests in Nigeria, Mali, and also in the UK. If you'd like to take part wherever you're watching, the numbers, the Skype contacts, the Twitter and Facebook details will all be on the screen as we go along. All of your comments come straight to me here. Julia in London's just tweeted us, my father works in oil and had an option of starting a project in the Maghreb last year. He declined because of safety. And Luis is watching us in New York also on Facebook saying, what are the chances of this situation spilling into other countries? Well, we'll put that point to Dr. Seb from the University of Birmingham, and keep those questions and comments coming. I'll work in as many as I can. More and more support coming in for the way Algeria acted, the way it went into the gas facility yesterday to take on those who are holding the hostages. AWAL in Nigeria has just called up saying Algeria is acting the best way. They shouldn't give militants any chance at all. Well, just before the news, we were speaking to Kumba, live with us from Bamako in Mali. She was saying it's good that the French have come in to break the deadlock between the government and the rebels in the north. And Alice from Women in Africa, a Nigerian living in London, you were clearly not disagreeing. Why don't you think the French can be useful in helping to move this conflict towards a resolution?
What I think that is the major problem that the world is facing at the moment is that in Africa in particular, we don't have a middle ground.
That sound doesn't sound too good, Alice. Just hold us there a little while. We'll sort out that microphone. In the meantime, let me bring in Smain, an Algerian living in London. And Smain, more and more support from our viewers coming in for the decisive action, or the attempt at decisive action yesterday from your government. I presume that's something you support based on what you said earlier.
Absolutely. That was the best course of action to save as much life as it could be, and I think they succeeded in that area.
Smate, thank you very much indeed. Well, Edward's watching us in Freetown, and he says, I think the French have plunged too deep to go back. Well, let's put that point to Kumba, who's live with us from Bamako. Do you think the French will be in your country for a long, long time?
You know, I don't have any problem with that, and I think most Malians don't have any problem with that, because I think I've said this a few days ago back on the radio. We and French people is not today a relationship. We have been together officially since the 15th century. And the French people who are living here are over 6,000 citizens. And they are not even like expatriates. They live deep in the villages. We get married to each other. Mm-hmm. So most French people know more about my country than I do myself, living here on the ground. So far, the general feeling in Mali is really about of trust we are towards the French. So if the French need to stay here for 5 years, 6 months, 3 months, you know, I think for the French, for the Malian, we all want this war to be over as soon as possible. That's our greatest wish.
But the point is, Kumba, you may be open to the idea of the French staying for a long time. I wonder if the French public is open to that idea. Dr. Seb, you are French, though you're based in the UK. Do you think Francois Hollande would be able to persuade people in France that military action should not be about weeks, it should be about months and even possibly years?
Yes, it is true that it might be a rather tough job for the president to justify to public opinion that the operation is taking longer than initially anticipated. But I mean, if we look at the precedent, for instance, of Afghanistan, we see that public opinion can be ready actually to tolerate this type of commitment. And as has just been mentioned also by our correspondent in Bamako, I think that there are also very strong ties between the Malian and French populations, and I hope that this would be actually a very good way of ensuring that the French population in general understands the reason of the French commitment to defending the Republic of Mali.
Dr. Seb, thank you very much indeed. A couple of other points to bring up that you're sending in online. Richard in Texas, thanks for tuning in. He's tweeted us using the WHYS hashtag. He says, expat oil workers have long accepted the places they work are not holiday spots. Well, I guess that's true, but maybe they at least expect not to be taken hostage by Islamist militants. More comments coming in from Norway, Pakistan, New Zealand and Bangladesh. Let's just go back to Smain, the Algerian in London, who's with us live. Smain, do you worry that what we're seeing is a problem that could spiral across Libya, across Mali, into Nigeria and other countries in West Africa?
Yeah, there are concerns about terrorism in the Sahel, but the terrorism was defeated in Algeria within the border, and it was pushed. Towards the Sahel. So they went to Mali, Niger, Mauritania, and from where we are seeing now, this became a hot area in terms of terrorism. There is, yes, indeed, there are worries in that sense, yes.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much indeed. Well, on the issue of the French involvement in Mali, Frank in the US has just called up to say the French should not intervene. They'll endanger innocent lives. They should negotiate. Well, I think the French and the Malian government would argue they tried to negotiate and they didn't feel that the rebels were listening. And Annette has just called up to say it's good the Algerians went in on Thursday. The Norwegian government isn't doing anything. And that's a reference to the fact that some Norwegians are caught up in this situation. She makes reference to the Anders Breivik attack and criticises the Norwegian government's response to that. The hashtag, as I keep mentioning, is WHYS. Let's pull this up from Camille in Paris. She has tweeted us saying the Putin method, tough but effective in the long term, discourages terrorists. For the families, it's another story. Well, Smain, you've been arguing for tough action against terrorists, but if you get tough with them, there are other people, innocent people, who often suffer.
Well, we have to accept the fact that if you want to defeat the terrorism, there is price to be paid. It's not free, and this is what happened in Amenas gas field. So the price had to be paid, I'm afraid to say, and some innocent people will have to will be killed in the middle of the crossfire.
Thank you.
That's the price. That's the price we have to accept to pay in order to combat this the terrorism.
You say it's a price worth paying. I wonder if those of you watching agree with that. Kumba, just before I let you go from Bamako, I've got to ask you, is your life being affected by the conflict, or is life today the same as it was last year or the year before?
Oh, no, definitely not. Life has been affected, mine personally and all Malians. We have been living this terrible situation for a year, actually, because it started full-fledged on January 17, 2012. But what I would like to say, for the Malian, the general feeling today is that of a relief. Because to us, it is the beginning of the end. Maybe for the international community, it's the beginning. But to Malian, it's the beginning of the end, because we have been suffering and we wanted to see some action for the longest. So frankly, this is, even though it's full-fledged war, we welcome it, because to us it's better than just sitting and crossing our fingers. Well, so the general feeling today is that of hope.
Thank you very much for joining us live, and best wishes to you. Dr. Seb, I wonder if I could just bring you in quickly, because lots of our viewers are asking variations on the question, what other countries could now be sucked into this? Do you think there are other countries in North or West Africa which could be affected?
Yes, it is true that in any case it is also one of the main objectives of the Islamist militant groups to expand their struggle to neighboring countries. So they started in Algeria, then settled in Mali, but they've got their sights on other countries, and in particular in Mauritania, where they used to be very active until the Mauritanian government waged also a very determined war against them. So I suppose that because it's neighboring with Libya, it is also with the Mali, sorry, because it's neighboring with the Mali, it is also a very clear target. Niger cannot be avoided, in particular because it is also an excellent terrestrial link towards Libya, where they can possibly get as well some further support coming from areas which are not necessarily under the full control of the government in Tripoli. So I would say that these, especially all these countries from the Saharo-Sahelian area, Mauritania and Niger, possibly, but no less surely than in Mauritania, for instance, Chad as well, where some Tubu leaders might be tempted as well to join forces in order to rebel against the central government in Chad. So yes, there is potential beyond Algeria and Mali for the conflict to spread. And for that reason, action also was needed, because otherwise there would have been the risk of a very quick spread of the violence beyond the borders of Mali.
Dr. Seb, thank you very much. The good news is we've fixed Alice's microphone. And Alice, we're talking a lot about Algeria and Mali, but actually Nigeria has a very serious problem with militant Islam. Do you worry that Boko Haram may get sucked into the broader picture?
Of course, I'm extremely worried. But first, there are 3 points I want to make, because I've not been able to come in. The issue of French intervention in Mali, and of course, my colleague, they're saying that they welcome it because they feel that is the beginning of the end for them. I think it's a little bit untimely to think that this is the best way to go, because military intervention is not something that the French comes in, then they are battling the Islamists, and that's it. No, I don't think so, because nobody knows yet how this is going to end. And there is no way at all military action, a counter-military, is going to lead to a peaceful living in Mali. That is for that. So I do not agree that the French going in without finding a diplomatic, peaceful method of solving the problem is the best way. Then on coming to Algeria, I would say that the Algerian government actually behaved the way a sovereign nation should behave. I believe that every government should take responsibility for whatever happens in their area of governance. So therefore, the Algerian government actually, for me, has full mark of saying we are a government, we do not condone this kind of behavior in our territory, in our government.
So you give the Algerian government full marks. I can see Smain nodding his head. Just hold some further thoughts, because we've got a couple of other things we need to bring in, Alice, but I promise I will come back to you. As I mentioned a little bit earlier in the programme, we've now got a video uploader, so if you're watching the programme and would like to contribute that way, you can record something on your tablet, on your phone or on your PC, and either we'll record it for you or you can record it in advance and upload it. You can do that at worldhaveyoursay.com. It's very, very simple. You'll see all the introductions and the explanations when you get there. worldhaveyoursay.com. Let's have a look at one of the videos that's just come in.
My name is Merlin Wilcox. I'm a GP and I've been working in primary healthcare in Mali on and off since 2004. I left the country on Sunday overland through Burkina Faso. At the present time, there are not great numbers leaving from the south of the country, which is still stable thanks to the rapid intervention of the French. The vast majority of my Muslim friends and colleagues in Mali are very grateful to the French for their rapid intervention. They say that the people leading this war are not real Muslims, and many are not even Malians. They're jihadists, and they want them out of their country as soon as possible. Mali can ill afford to lead this war. At the best of times, 1 in 5 children dies before his 5th birthday. Now, even health service vehicles are being commandeered to help in the war effort.
Well, Mali, thank you very much indeed for that. Alice, a quick response from you there. Do you accept there are many people in Mali who welcome the French?
Well, people will welcome the French coming in, because it would appear that the Malian government is completely helpless. And when you have a situation where a government is helpless, then that government is not worth its title. the government, every sovereign government, should be in a position to secure its citizens. And obviously, this has failed. And we also bring in Nigeria, because we know now that the Nigerians have also brought in arms to come and defend the Malians in this crisis.
Well, you're quite right.
We also know that Boko Haram, a lot of the people fighting the war in Boko Haram, where Nigerians are not safe, again, may not be Nigerians per se.
And all I was doing, Alice, was just jumping into, you're mentioning the Nigerian involvement in Mali, and it's probably worth giving those of you watching a couple of figures. 1,200 Nigerian troops are expected to be in Mali in the future. They're not all there now. Chad is planning to send up to 2,000, and several other African countries will also be contributing to the military effort to combat the rebels in the north of the country. Well, Dr. Seb, Alice and Smain, thank you very much indeed. I can see Alice has got a number of other points, but we're going to turn our attentions to Lance Armstrong in a little while. So we're going to turn our attention to that. So those of you who want to talk about the situation in North and West Africa, I would just say head to our Facebook page and we will get back to you on that, either through our radio programme, or we may well be returning to this a little later in the week.